If you need to pass the CSCS, watch this YouTube. You can also listen to the podcast, Show Up Fitness, all about showing up. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Show Up Fitness podcast. Today we have Professor Barack, and we're going to be talking about the CSCS, getting you all to pass this ASAP. We'll go over everything A to Z. Before we do that, let's start off by designing an in-season program for a basketball player, Barack.
All right. Well, let's get it going. So again, always when you're thinking about programming, again, you notice how Chris mentioned the portion of the season, in season. So as coaches, we want to always make sure we understand what our goals are, where we are in the season, because that's going to determine how we can make a program. So if I hear in season, I already know what. They're probably playing a lot of games. And, we're early in the basketball season right now. So thank God it shouldn't be too withered down yet. But we still want to prepare. So we have to optimize our time with efficiency, as well as make sure we're not overdoing things. So we want to implement some power. Again, why? Because the sport is very anaerobic, very power-based. So we need to have some kind of power in the workout. But again, are we going to be doing multiple sets of this like we would be off-season or preseason? Probably not. So there's going to be some power involved. There should be some slight strength involved. And then we probably need to work on the number of ways you can call it, whether it's supplemental, accessory, mobility. We need to do some things that can just optimize their movement. Some people call it functional work. But so I'm going to start out with a full dynamic warm-up. I like to start out with just a dynamic circuit, maybe some skips to start off, just get the body going. There's a number of different skip series you can do, but let's just say some dynamic skips, maybe some A skips, maybe some high reaches. Then we'll go into an inchworm with the toe touch. So walking, again, that's a full body, just mobility. Walk it out into that plank position, do some toe touches. From there, I want to do some hip mobility. Let's say some kneeling hip CARs. CAR is an acronym for Controlled Articular Revolution. It's kind of getting that hip girdle warmed up. We'll go 10 in each direction. From there, we'll go into some banded lateral raises just for the shoulders. And maybe something isometric, like an isometric ball hold or something, just to get them going. All right, now we're getting into this work. Now we're getting into the workout. So I want to do something, as I mentioned, powerful and explosive. There's a number of different ways we can go to this. We could do cleans, but I'm trying to think even more specific. Maybe we could do some split jerk press. Again, specificity. This might mimic movements in basketball, rebounding, shooting. So let's start with a split jerk press. We'll just do two sets. Again, not high volume. We'll do 2 sets of about 4 reps. I'm going to pair this up with the dynamic ball slam. Again, in my head, I'm kind of thinking it's more of a push movement, whereas the ball slam is not a pull per se, but it's kind of an explosive going downward, whereas the split jerk is going upward. So we'll super that. Just 2 rounds. I do about 4 reps on the split jerk press. We'll go about 8 to 10 ball slams, maximizing power. From there, I want to get into some strength. So let's go trap bar deadlift here. Again, why did I choose trap bar? A few reasons. One, I do like the trap bar, but again, what are we talking about? We're talking about basketball here. These guys are typically going to be taller. Guys or girls are typically going to be taller. The barbell deadlift might not always be optimal. Trap bar gives them a little easier range of motion. Here, we'll go again. Maybe a warm-up set. And then we're going in the strength zone for about 5 reps. You can optimize speed here or strength. So I like to do a combination of both 5 reps, trying to get them done as fast as you can. But it's going to be some heavy weight, probably anywhere from 80 to 85, even upwards of 90% of their working max. And here, if you wanted to, you can superset. Let's go core accessory. My favorite format, as well as Chris's. We can superset this with maybe some dumbbell chest press. We'll go 2 rounds of about 10 reps. Again, we're in that kind of hypertrophy range. And then we'll go with an accessory as well, some kind of plank variation, just to get that core working. And then from here, I want to get into some a little bit more. Now I'll kind of get into what I call just like a hybrid of some volume, mixed with some accessory work. From here, we might go into a spot, maybe some split squats, RFESS, rear foot elevated, Bulgarian. I really don't know if there's a difference. I see them both written out. We'll go into some split squats here. We'll go 2 rounds of about 10 reps per leg. We'll pair that up with some face pulls. Again, I want to get the shoulders and rear delts involved. We'll pair it up with some face pulls for about, let's say, 15 reps. And then let's throw in, again, I'm trying to think of something dynamic and, mobility-wise. We could go into some, I'm thinking maybe some dead bugs here, maybe like a weighted dead bug for some core and mobility, 2 rounds of about 45 seconds. And then an optional finisher, a few different ways you can go here. Obviously, we're not trying to get this finisher is just optional. But if you wanted to get a little work in, maybe just like an arm burnout, maybe some bicep curls or push-ups just as a finisher. Again, we're in season, off season, I might make this more of a conditioning finisher. But here's just a little accessory work. So let's just say some burnout curls. Chris is the curl man. Any suggestions you got on that? But just a little accessory to finish. Again, we're in season. Notice how 2 sets of everything. We're probably not going to be going 3 sets of things in season. This is more peaking and maintenance. So the peaking aspect is that power we mentioned. We want to make sure the quick switch is there. We're firing on all cylinders. And the maintenance is going to be some of those things we mentioned, the split squats, single leg work, the core work with the dead bugs, the planks, just got to make sure everything is in place. And then a little volume, but again, not high on the set end.
Love it. There is a great program for a basketball player. And now we're going to transition into talking more about why we chose certain exercises and a little bit more about periodization, because the CSCS is no joke. The only reason I got it is because I wanted to put it on my book when I finished it. And it is something that is respected within the industry because the scientific portions, no joke. We're not talking about simple stuff like concentric, eccentric, which you will have some stuff on, but it's going to be looking at the sarcoplasmic reticulum, calcium, actin, myosin, physiology portions that are very, very challenging. So let's dissect what the test is like. And this is the 4th edition for the Essentials of Strength and Conditioning, which is written by Half and Triplet. And Barack and I teach a course twice a week. We have recordings on there. But more importantly, you get to ask questions to make sure you understand, because a big problem that we see with people who have failed the CSCS is they don't understand the basics. So when Barack was talking about doing a rear foot elevated split squat, knowing that the agonist at the hip is going to be your glutes, the synergist will be your adductors, quads would also be the agonist at the knee, knowing the concentric portion, eccentric portion. So many people will miss those little things. And so let's just really dissect what the test is about, and then get into some success stories that we have with people and strength coaches who are out there now doing what they want to do as a strength coach, and how we help prep them for it.
Yes, sir. So yeah, CSCS Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist exam is it's considered the gold standard in certifications in our industry. It is obviously tailored toward people that want to work with athletes. But again, it's a lot of high-level knowledge and stuff just to work with more advanced clients, even with some of my, I guess, general pop clients. Some of the stuff you can apply. Just think of somebody who's, maybe 6 months plus in, a year in, and they maybe hit their aesthetic goals and just kind of want to continue training for some kind of added motivation. There's some things from there. But yes, this is going to be tailored more towards people, coaches and strength coaches training athletes. The breakdown of the exam is going to be a total of, I want to say 215 questions, if I'm not mistaken, or 220 maybe. Again, I think like 20 to 25 of those aren't actually graded. They're just for research purposes, but you're going to have 95 questions. That's the scientific foundations portion. That they give you an hour and a half to take. That is mainly exercise science and nutrition. Like Chris mentioned, there's some stuff you want to make sure, especially in my experience, I generally see people that don't come from a background of exercise science or some kind of kines degree. Typically, people that didn't have that might struggle a bit with which again, I recommend even just doing the show up internship, our people that have learned our anatomy stuff seem to do better. But you definitely, this can be a struggle if you haven't taken any classes on this before. And then the other portion is going to be the practical and applied. It's 125 questions, 2.5 hours, a little longer. There's going to be a video component to this, and you're going to cover exercise technique, program design, organization and administration, testing and evaluation. So again, on that side of things, kind of the flip of what I mentioned, whereas the people who haven't taken classes might struggle on the science portion. People who haven't, done their hours or done the time in the industry might struggle with the practical portion. Again, this is going to be some stuff might feel like second nature if you've been a coach before, but other stuff you might not notice. And if you're not just used to looking at movement on a regular, it can be tough. And we've noticed people have some struggles with this, which is why we try to do some things in ours, like obviously in-person stuff, but showing videos to prep. But those are going to be the breakdown. So you get 4 hours total to take it. I believe they let you take a brief break in between the two, but that's going to be the breakdown.
24 chapters. In 2030, you're going to need a specific degree in kinesiology. But for now, at least for the 4th edition, and I believe for the 5th, you do not need a specific degree in kinesiology. And the test is no joke. It is there's 3 answers, and you need to answer the questions based off of what they want. So, we don't work for NSCA. We don't have any insider information or anything, but if you think like how you train, that's how you can get in trouble. So for example, they could show a video of the strength coach behind someone spotting a step up. And you could be thinking like, I would never, ever spot someone on a step up, but that's what the NSCA wants. And so they like remove the spotter or something like that. And that wouldn't be the right answer because you would need a spotter according to the NSCA. So you need to answer it the way that they want you to. And people will struggle on the mathematical aspects with the calculations from nutrition because you got to break down some of that. And then also depending on your background, where, the big elephant in the room is a lot like all the other textbook certifications, that you don't have the ability to go to someone for feedback on your programming. You take the test, you pass it, and then you take your resume, and then you would try to go get an internship or somewhere at a college. Now, you may be listening to this and thinking, well, should I get my CSCS? I want to separate myself from other trainers. It's not should you get it or shouldn't you get it. It's what do you want to do with it? So if you want to work with your kids' soccer team and it's 5th, 6th, 7th graders, you don't need to have it to be able to work with them. You need to understand the fundamentals behind working with athletes. And that's the stuff that we really hammer down. And one of the things I really like you can know the terminology. So when Brock was going through the warm-up, they call that a RAP warm-up, RAAPP, I believe. So you got to raise your blood pressure, activate all planes of motion. And then they do potentiation and PNF. And PNF is proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. You need to know the specific contract, relax, agonist, contraction methods. And they could even have a little video on there, and you have an athlete doing some type of PNF, and that would be the answer. But it's really how you can apply this stuff based on the fundamentals and order of operations. Because notice how Brock didn't start out with the finisher, because that would be taken away from optimization of the workouts. And that's one of the things I really do appreciate about this book is getting a degree in kinesiology. The professors would use this textbook one. And I also recognize a lot of professors in this. And another thing I loved is because they debunk the hell out of unstable surface training. And we know how much I like that. But you do have an order of operations that is up to date with science. So making sure that you are doing power and strength, and then finishing off with your endurance. And so let's talk a little bit about the needs analysis, because that's something from here that we really focus on in class. And unlike just taking the CSCS, when you go through our program, which is 2 months, we've had someone pass it in less than 2 months. Megan, she's a rock star. But let's talk about the needs analysis and how you would implement that if you were to be this coach working with the team, and how this is really helpful for you.
Yeah, for sure. So the needs analysis, I think that's what we talk about. Like, obviously, what we do in our class is prepare you for this exam first and foremost. when we're talking about, using this stuff elsewhere and taking it to your practice or your coaching, I think the needs analysis is going to be one of the most important things and actually useful things that you're learning from this and taking. So think of it as ultimately the full assessment process. If we're training Gen Pop clients, we're going to always do some kind of assessment, see where they're at or where they need to go. The needs analysis is going to break down into a few different parts because, of course, we need to learn about this individual athlete and where they are and where they need to be, but we also have to factor in the sport, the nature of the sport, and the demands needed for that. So you get like a kind of both a macro and a micro level, assessment process where we have to think of the needs of the sport, whether that's the movements involved. So again, we mentioned basketball earlier. We know that there's going to be a lot of jumping, a lot of lateral movement, a lot of overhead movement with shooting, rebounding, blocking shots. We know that triple extension, hips, ankles, knees are all working at once. So these are some of the things we think about. And then we want to think about the bioenergetics, which I would probably say is, to me, the most important thing, knowing the energy system. This is where traditional coaches probably, I guess, missed out on the most. They're just training everybody the same way. We need to know if a sport is majority anaerobic, we probably shouldn't be doing multiple mile tests to see if somebody's ready to go for this sport. We need to know the breakdown. So for basketball, it's going to be very anaerobic ATP PC. That's going to be the majority, but you're also going to have a lot of glycolytic energy going on, but there is going to be an aerobic component as well. Again, if I had to, throw some numbers out there, I'll probably say, 60, 65, 25, 10, as far as like the breakdown, ATP PC, glycolytic, and aerobic. But again, that can vary. But knowing the bioenergetics is going to know what you need to focus on in your programming. And then the common injuries of the sport would be the other kind of macro level, every athlete thing, knowing injuries that are common. We know we're going to have some knee stuff, ankle, a lot of the lower body joints could be affected. Torn Achilles are, again, not crazy probably, but you see them happen in basketball. Torn ACLs, injuries involved in jumping and landing, potential hamstring injuries. So again, these are all things we need to factor in when we're assessing this. And then from there, the individual needs of the athlete. Again, everyone's going to vary. I think of Zion Williamson, NBA player right now. Almost always he's going to come in off season a little overweight, not only because he's had some injuries, but he's a naturally bigger person. So his individual assessment is going to be different from somebody like a Kevin Durant, who probably couldn't be overweight if he, ate out of house and home. And so these are the things we have to think about outside of the team sport aspects or the needs of the sport, but this individual and what we're going to focus on as a coach.
So the bioenergetics is confusing for a lot of people. And that's why we bring on a professor, Dr. Chaliwa. He hops on here and he breaks down the more scientific principles from the structural aspect of the sarcomere, actin, myosin, but also gets a lot more into the periodization and as well as the bioenergetics. Bioenergetics, we always got to remember that it's never just one source of energy. It's not just creatine phosphate or just glycolysis. It's always a combination depending on the duration and intensity. And so as the coach, and something I appreciate from this book is it is daily undulating periodization, whereas linear is not as effective as DUP. And that's what you were talking about earlier, like doing the power stuff first and then strength and ending up conditioning. And they do a lot with the preparation, first transition, competition phase, second transition. Let's talk a little bit about that with periodization, because I know that there's a lot of stuff on the exam around that, and it can be confusing for people when it comes to that breakdown.
Yeah. So with periodization, ultimately, the biggest thing you're gonna want to know is what phase of the season we're in, and the goals based around that. So CSCS has NSCA has their own terms that they use, but they kind of line up with. So we typically are here off season, preseason, in season, postseason. I would say are the common terms, just to talk about different phases. CSCS is going to talk about your general preparatory is what they call the kind of first portion of the off season. Then you're going to have your first transition, which kind of aligns with a mixture of the off season into the preseason. Then you're going to have your, well, I think they call it competition or competitive is going to be the actual season. Then your second transition or active recovery is going to kind of be that postseason. And so we always, it's important to know where we are because we're going to focus on certain things. So as you can imagine, the competition or the end season is going to be the most focus on the sport and probably the least focus on a lot of volume in the weight room. So again, we did that program already to start this call, but kind of backtracking into that general prep or off-season period, we know that this is going to be this is the strength and conditioning coach's time. It's our time to shine. The sports activity, as far as like games, are going to be low or non-existent. Like a sport like basketball, obviously they play all the time, but it'd be like summer ball, summer league for the young athletes, or just like pro-am stuff. So we can really hit it hard in the weight room. If somebody needs to really build some muscle, we can focus on it then. A lot of volume, a lot of conditioning if that's what they need. So this is when you're going to be able to do the most as an S&C coach. Then when you get in that first transition, preseason, we're still going to be able to get a nice moderate to high level of volume, but the skills training and sports training is going to start to bump up a bit. Preseason or that first transition is one of my favorite periods because you really are hitting it hard. That's going to be where you're trying to hit some maxes. You're implementing power, and camp is probably starting. So again, this is where 2-a-days happens. This is where we're really probably hitting it our hardest. So, fuel and nutrition, in my opinion, is going to be very important as well in this phase. As you transition into that competitive, as we already talked about, again, peaking and maintenance is going to be the goal. Maximizing our time, getting some power in, but not a lot. Making sure that the range of motion is where it needs to be, recovery is where it needs to be optimally performing. And then postseason, second transition is going to be probably not doing much at all on the strength and conditioning side. Usually we're going to tell them get away from the weight room, you do some yoga, implement another sport maybe. But this is going to be our period of typically, I think CSCS is going to say up to 4 weeks. In real life, it's probably realistically anywhere from 2 to 10 weeks, depending on the athlete. I feel like football players may need a little more time to recover, or the rougher sports. Whereas, the kind of the crazy, the lunatic people who just can't stay away from the sport, you might see them getting back to things in 2 weeks. But this is that period of really resetting and relaxing before you hit it hard in the off season again.
If we take that program that Brock designed in the beginning, some of the things that they're going to test you on a lot more would be the plyometric aspect. So another thing I appreciate with this textbook is all the athletes in the photos, they're jumping properly, which is loading your hands back and then coming forward. You're going to get more on your vert from that as well, like 30-40% when you properly implement those mechanics. But a normal lift, if we were to go to the gym and bench press or do some bicep curls, on the way up, when your elbow's flexing, that's your bicep brachii. That is concentrically accelerating elbow flexion. And then on the way down, that's eccentric. And anytime we pause, that's isometric. Now, the big difference between those movements and plyometrics is the middle portion. And that middle portion is called your amortization. And it's a very quick, rapid reflex that takes place in the spinal column. And so you will be tested a lot with the programming, plyometric stuff, and then the different scenarios with specific athletes that they're going to test you on. And I'm sure it's going to change in the next edition, where this one seemed to be more like, a cross-country person or American football. And they say American because it's an international exam. So football somewhere else would be soccer to us. So, and then they may have a swimmer or someone along those lines. And I see a change, especially with I'm looking at their sports science essentials right here, and having a lot more tactile stuff. Duncan French was actually one of my professors at University of Connecticut, and he's the head of the UFC and the programming for that. So I would probably guess in the next text, they're going to have a lot more unique athletes because MMA is huge, boxing's huge.
Yeah.
This one's primarily your simple sports. And you just need to know what the sport demands are for bioenergetics. And another hard part is if you're a dude and you train a lot of dudes, it's easy to understand that if I were to say Brock can bench 185, you'd be like, okay, Brock's weak. He sucks. The hard part is, what about a lineman? And if you're working as a cross country coach and you've never worked with football and you see a 275 bench press, you're like, oh my God, that's a lot of weight. But
Yeah.
according to these norms, that's underperforming. And so another hard thing is for dudes who aren't used to working with girls. And so, you have a girl who bench presses 85 and you're like, oh, it's not bad. Not according to the CSCS. And so let's just go over some of those. You see it all the time online, the percent values that you need to know for the different athletes. So looking at like a basketball player, would a bench press of 85 pounds for a female be good or bad?
Yeah, so that's a good one. We're probably gonna want to improve that again, which is again, you have to think in terms of the sport and kind of the norms there. It's like 85-pound bench for a girl on average. I say that's not terrible. You hit the bar, slap two tens on each side, decent. But yeah, we're the 50th percentile for basketball women, the Division I level, based on again this the CSCS numbers, is going to be I want to say closer to about 105, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Chris?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I think 106, I think is the exact number they give. So that's going to be well below the 50th percentile. So that's going to be something we need to work on. And as Chris touched on, that like those are things you might need to study if you have not worked with the athlete or sport. You probably are going to need to study that more so than me coming from a football background. I probably spew the average numbers off the top of my head.
You don't need to memorize both. To my knowledge, the test is they usually will give you both scenarios. So they're going to say 97 or parentheses 44 kilograms, because we're the only weird nation that goes off of pounds. Everyone else goes off of kilograms. So you don't have to memorize both. They will provide those for you. You need to just really know above and below that 50th percentile. And they're typically not going to give you like three super close scenarios, like 100, 105, 110. It's going to be exactly how Brock said it too. They're not going to use poor vocabulary, like I said, good or bad. It's going to be, you're working with a collegiate swimmer. She's 20 years old and her back squat is 100 pounds. What does she need to improve in the off season? And they're going to have some other battery of tests too. Maybe what her time on a 50-meter swim is, her VO2 max, maybe a vertical jump, whatever. And so you just need to be able to pick and pull what those norms are and if they're good and bad. And for a collegiate 20-year-old female, a back squat of 100 pounds, how's that, Brock?
You say out 125?
100 pounds.
For the back squat?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna need to work on that one. So that's one of those general numbers where I hear that you're gonna, for most of the sports involved, you're gonna know that's gonna be well below that 50th percentile.
And knowing the specific tests that you could be tested on, like the 300-yard shuttle test, what are some good scores for that? And some of them I can't even pronounce, like the Margaria-Coleman stair step test. You just need to know what that looks like, how to test for it. It's a power output. Knowing the definition of power, there's two different variations that they could test you on. What are what's the definition of power, Brock?
Power is going to be force times velocity. A lot of different ways you can see that. Just load times displacement. Ultimately, how much and how fast you can move something.
And then they have their yo-yo test, and so when you go through the text, we will help you navigate focal points and also extracurricular of developing an athlete who you ideally want to work with. So this last group, we're actually going to bring him on for a podcast because Blaze is one of our rock stars. He got his CPT. He went through level 2 nutrition, mentorship online. And then he was our first Show Up Fitness guy to go and take and pass the CSCS. And so one of the people that he wants to work with, MMA fighters. And so on day one, what we do is we teach you about the needs analysis, but then you need to design a program for that hypothetical athlete. And we prepare you for the interview process. So if you listen back a few podcasts ago, we had someone who passed Tier X trainer from Equinox, and he
Yeah.
went and interviewed Zane. And so he was prepared for that because of the test prep that we have. So we're going to get you to pass this easy, but what about finding a job? What about an internship? And how do you interview? Do you dress up? Do you not dress up? And as he said on the interview, he said that he went in there dressed to impress. It was 6 a.m. and he stood out. He stood out, but it's way better to stand out than to not stand out. And so we'll prep you to get hired and start your strengthening conditioning process. What would be some things that really stick out at you when we have been, because we'll quiz you a lot in class. And if you can't make the live calls, we can help you by they're recorded, and we're getting a lot more people internationally, which is great. And something I'm learning about, as which we teach you as a great strength coach, you understand the human body. The average coach understands their body. And so if we're working with cricket, for example, I'm like, what the fuck is cricket? I've never played that. Ever played cricket before, Brock?
I have not played cricket.
I don't know the utensils and stuff that you use, but I could watch the sport in 10 minutes and tell you how to program for someone, because you can look at the energy demands, you can see common injuries, the muscles that are engaged, muscle actions, and then you're able to design that program based on the individual. And so we're developing a lot more for sports that are outside the United States, which is great and fun because it gets you to think critically. So you will go through the program, you'll have an athlete, a 30-day program, and then we'll bring in stuff from our sources, because Brock has a ton of connections being a D1 athlete himself, playing football. And who was it, your buddy or a cousin who worked with the Cowboys? What was, because we like going over that.
Oh yeah, one of my best friends. He was with the Cowboys. He's actually now the special teams coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings. So yeah, he's going through the ringer, growing his way up. Yeah, he started with the Rams as an assistant special teams coordinator, then Cowboys, and now he's a special teams coordinator. So again, we talk and discuss a lot, kind of their programming and how they're progressing. But yeah, it's cool. I've been fortunate. I probably say well over 15 people that played or coached in the league, and about 3 to 4 active still.
And we bring an RD on to help you understand the sports side of nutrition aspects. And, we helped someone recently passed on the Timberwolves. He's a strength coach, Scott. He's my buddy. And also Ben, he's a strength coach for the Sixers. Because if you don't, it's easy to let the stuff kind of go under the table. And if you don't keep up with the CEUs, you have to retake it. So make sure to maintain those CEUs. And we're always working on networking and bringing people on the podcast, also in the classes. So if you're listening to this and this may be one of your first times exposed to Show Up, and you know anyone who could help, get our reach out there more, because ultimately we want to get more people to pass the CSCS, but then take that next step, which we feel is a lot more important, in getting into an environment where you can gain the hands-on experience and learn how to do a lot of the stuff. Because I don't care who you are, you could read this textbook 1,000 times. It's not going to fucking teach you how to do a power cleanse.
Yeah.
You need to get out there and have people show you, trial and error, get in front of the right coaches, and then implement that. And I think that's an important topic, because just because you took this and passed it and you are not proficient in a power clean or a snatch or whatever it is, don't start teaching people that. You need to teach within your lane and find the additional resources that will help your athletes safely. Now, the last little topic I wanted to breach is, it's a loaded one, especially with social media. You see a lot of these coaches who are working with these elite athletes. Let's take Henry, for example, from Tennessee, and Derrick Henry. It wasn't too long ago, maybe 2 seasons ago, there was some exercises that he was doing that were, from a strength side of it, you're like, well, that's just kind of dumb. And he's crushing it. I mean, he's an absolute monster. And these guys can just do insane things. But just because it's on social media and you're working with an athlete, it doesn't mean that exercise or that protocol helped the athlete get better. And I think that's really hard to understand for people. So let's dissect that a little bit, Brock.
Yeah. I think that's one of those things, man. It's a tough industry to be in for those reasons. When we talk about high level athletes, the thing that makes them high level a lot of times is just going to be whether you call it genetics, just pure, pure strength, pure power to a certain level. And yeah, as a strength coach, it's easy to try things out or do things you might have seen someone you respected do and be like, oh, this works because Derrick Henry goes out and has a 2,000-yard season, and you're like, yep, that's what I was doing. And then, but what you don't see, I think our business is always looking at like the long term. Again, Derrick Henry's situation, he's a horse, he's still doing just fine. But if you really look at a lot of athletes, and sometimes these ones that are working with strength coaches, if you look at them not just in a 1 year period, but like a 3 year or a 5 year, there are a lot of injuries that potentially could have been avoided, with proper training. And those are things that's hard. But yeah, if I'm just a new aspiring strength and conditioning coach and I go online and I see somebody working with these high level athletes, I'm gonna think everything they're doing is great because why wouldn't I? It's these, but I think that's the hard part. And I actually had my good friend Brandon Boykin on one of our calls. It was probably about a year and a half ago now. He was on. We had him join as a guest on our CSCS call, and he really talked about how he thinks a lot of his injuries that came in like year 5, year 6, year 7 of his NFL career. He played with the Eagles, then the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then the Baltimore Ravens. But he said because he was doing bad training, he didn't know any better, and he didn't get a good trainer. I think he said about year 5 of his career when he was playing with the Steelers, he had one of his best seasons ever, wasn't getting hurt. But a lot of other years he would have these little injuries, and he realized he was just training ridiculously. So I think it's hard because if you're working with a high level athlete, a lot of times you can get away with a lot. But two things: one, you got to look at the long term, and also most of us are probably like the average athlete we're going to work with. Even at the D1 level, a lot of these people aren't going to be the physical specimens of the best, and you're going to have to really be intentional with your programming because the best of the best can get away with it, but the majority aren't going to be able to get away with it, and that's where we come in, and that's why it's important to do things the right way.
The software is insane in the genetic code. I mean, you have a great genetic code. You have a cousin in the NBA, and you were a D1 athlete, and your son's probably going to be a D1 athlete. Yeah. But just because an exercise didn't work from not implementing it properly doesn't mean the exercise is bad. And I think that's where you look at where most of us learn, the PE coach or the coach in high school. And so everyone goes in the gym, we lift heavy on bench and squat and leg press, whatever it is. We hurt ourselves and then we blame that exercise, but that coach wasn't an expert in movement from the get-go. And so when you learn how to periodize the percentages, we're not doing like a 5 rep max on a back squat for Derrick Henry is probably like 600 pounds. And so we wouldn't be going to volitional fatigue. You can take a percentage of that, 85%, and you just work on the speed component because athletes don't go to volitional fatigue. You need to train them the explosiveness out of the box or whatever it may be for them. And so you can strategically train properly and you're going to improve significantly. And we need to be careful of people who we follow. And like, for example, you have like Joel Seedman, and he's doing a bunch of stuff where 90-degree angles, and it's not backed by science, but he has a PhD and he has the clientele. So everyone says that's the end all be all. So you could take some gold nuggets from it, but then find a therapist who has a background in strength and conditioning, and find other strength coaches and fact check it. And then that's how you're really going to grow as a coach is, think of it as if you had an opportunity to train with just one NFL team for a summer or 30 teams, which one are you going to become more diverse and better off? It's looking at those 30 teams because you have 30 different coaches. You come back and you take the little nuggets, but from a holistic point, it's going to be fairly similar. You're going to have some outliers. You're going to have some teams that still just squat, bench, and deadlift because the strength coach has been there for 30 years. Push them aside. You're going to have some new coaches like the fucking Tom Brady guy who's doing a bunch of weird shit. And it's like, okay, push it aside. There you go. You're making a lot of money. It's great. And then you take the 80 percentile of it and 80% of it, and that's where it's going to help you be successful. So any last pointers for people who are trying to take the CSCS, get this over with? What can you help them with, Brock?
Yeah, I would just say, man, like just knock it out. I think more than anything, again, I know it doesn't have the highest pass rate, and I know how intimidating it could be, but just knock it out. I mean, that's why we're here to help. There are a lot of resources, but we're here to help you knock it out because as Chris has touched on, it is not going to qualify you, but it's a great credential to have. But you need to get to work. I want to just point out, a great recent example. We've had Devin Wiltshire. He took our course over the summer, and he reached out via social media just now. He was like stalling, just was nervous to take it, but had some connections and potential good opportunities to like get to work, but was scared, didn't feel qualified, and so we just had him take the class, and now within the last 6 months he did a summer internship at Colorado Boulder under Coach Prime and them, and now he's the assistant strength and conditioning coach at Stony Brook, getting 2 Division I schools, and he who knows, he probably could have done it a year earlier if he wasn't really worried about the exams. Just get it out of the way. I honestly would say don't even stress yourself about failing. Again, we obviously don't take exams to fail, but you can retest, and if you pass one portion, you don't have to retake it. But we've been able to help a lot of people with that too. They come to us after they've already failed, and we're able to get that's easy. We already what the exam is like and what they expect, and we can just really streamline the process. So if I say anything, just sign up, get the test date done. We've even seen that. We've had people take the course, not sign up, and more and more they get nervous. But the people who sign up with us, get the help, and then sign up for their exam, almost always knock it out within that 60-day window we talk about.
You're not trying to ace this sucker. You just want to pass it. And we had a couple of questions. People reached out, and someone asked about getting the NASM PES or the CSCS. And that's it's not even comparable. It's like comparing a 4th grade basketball team to the Sixers, because the PES is you get the textbook and you study and take it at home, where the CSCS you need, especially in 2030, you have to have that college degree. But the information is directly applicable to the field of movement. And so if you are going to take the PES, don't put that in your bio thinking that's going to give you credibility. The only credibility you're going to get when it comes to strength and conditioning is the CSCS, just like with powerlifting. It's the Olympic powerlifting one that you put in there. With kettlebells, it's strong first, or anything under paddle. You want to further your career and always be educating and learning, but don't put stuff that's going to have other coaches look at you like you're an idiot. So make sure the CSCS is a legit test. We'll help you pass it, move on, get a good little internship, and start helping your athletes. So thank you for your time today, Brock. I love this. This is great. And where can people find you on Instagram and YouTube?
Check me out. I'm at Rock B Training, ROCKB Training on Instagram and TikTok. My YouTube, you search my name, Barack Little, should come up. But if you ever have any questions just regarding training, education, coaching in general, or what, I want to just get connected or shadow somebody, feel free to reach out.
And you got your badass golf clothing. It's blackballed, right?
Oh yeah, blackballed golf. Yeah, a washed up football player turned golfer. If you want to be in style when you're on the course, check out Blackballed Golf on all social media platforms as well.
All right, my man. All right. Well, chat with you later. Have a great rest of the day. We'll see you.
All right, I'll let you.